Hey there, Radmilla Del Pozzo. It's so good to see you after a long time.
Hello, Angie. Nice to be here.
How have you been? And can you share something about you that people won't read about you on the internet?
Absolutely. I'm doing fine. I'm doing well. Yes, I can actually. And I don't know if it's a funny story or not, but I've done my entire career now at EY in the mobility space. And funnily enough, as I was starting my career, I was looking for an internship. And I was lucky to invited to a few interviews. And one of the interviews was with EY. And I've done the interview with EY, went great, and they offered me an internship. And after one day of reflection, I said no. I've called them. I said no, I don't want the internship. And I was looking, and I continued to look for something else. And 2 weeks after, uh, my mom was talking to me a lot about my work and my future career. She said, like, why did you say no? I said, oh, I don't really see I belong to EY. And then actually I called them and then she said to me, it's a nice way to start your career. I'm sure it's gonna bring you things and it's only for a year. And if you don't like it, you do something else. And so I called EY back and I said, you know what, actually I changed my mind. Do you still okay to take me? And they said, yes, we take you with pleasure. So I
Well,
don't know if it's a bit of a funny story, but that's something you wouldn't find anywhere.
yeah, and you've been there now for how many years? 20?
15. 15.
You started as a teenager.
Uh,
Oh,
as an intern, I started as an intern. It was my first job.
yeah.
So
And we met maybe 3 years ago. Time flies.
time flies.
So we met because of the Global Mobility Academy, and you're obviously an expert in global mobility, a partner in the space. And I think, in Switzerland, being a female partner, that is an achievement. So congrats, first of all. How did you get into this field and why do you do what you do?
Mm. So I shared before, I went into the field almost accidentally. So I
Mhm.
had that internship. The reason why I applied initially for an internship at EY is because I was very interested into equity compensation. I found that that was a fascinating topic because it was a mix between individual and personal belongings and taxes, and at the same time, some kind of company managed incentive. And that's the reason why I started, right? And but then, of course, I discovered for myself, and it's probably also the reason why so many people stay in mobility, is that it's a mix of numbers and taxes, which is something, if you like it, it's something also nice to work with. But at the same time, it requires a lot of human interactions at different levels, right? It's from level of HR people at the company, but then individuals who are moving in Switzerland, out of Switzerland, and you create really trustful relationship with them. And I think of myself of really like being a people person. And so I think this is the kind of right combo for me. And then at the same time, in an environment at EY where I always felt that I get a lot of support also outside a bit of the mobility space and our mobility team, and where you can grow and work sometimes on opportunity that you wouldn't necessarily have anywhere else.
And that's just amazing. Did you um, did you think about why you were, like so attracted to this diverse area? Is it a personality thing?
It's a good question, but probably it comes to my personal background, right? I lived in many countries and have from, I would say, totally different cultural and personal background. And I think I like that, and I like that diversity because I think it brings to every one of us something else to their life. because the numbers and the tax return and all of that is fascinating and interesting and tax topic itself, right? But I think the fact that you can realize that we in Switzerland, we live in that little somehow bubble, an island, a wonderful island that we all like very much, right? But there is so much else also outside. And I think you get to connect with that through mobility, sometimes even more than different other jobs you might have. Because in the same day, I mean, first of all, you can talk to people from around the world. So your colleague, you might have a call with your Japanese colleagues in the morning and late afternoon with the US colleagues. You talk about a specific tax topic, and it's interesting also to see why and how different countries have approached one specific problem. Sometimes that it's not so much diverse, by the way, because tax is very much similar in countries. I mean, you can have different approaches, right? But we have, I think, the common sense of income tax, or potentially wealth tax is a bit the same in each country. But I like that approach of having to interact and chat with different people, but at the same time as well is to be able when we talk to our client is to come with a common approach, which I think is extremely powerful.
Mm.
Because, when a client comes to see you, the usual way I would say is to say, oh, this is the way we see it in Switzerland. But the client will have a family in another country,
Mm.
assets in another country. He might work in a third country. He needs actually the whole of it to understand his situation and to be able to advise him. You need to understand that background. And if you don't know the answer because it's technical from another country, then you need to have the colleagues and the knowledge inside of EY, or in my case EY, but can be another firm, to actually connect the dots and understand what it means for him. Because a good advice, and I've seen it a lot actually in my career, a good advice that when you only look at one country doesn't answer the question in most of the cases. Because you need to have that most commonly approach to really understand what does it actually mean for your client and not just a theory.
I completely agree with you there, Radmilla. I think, the really good professionals in our field, they know how to connect the dots and also, think beyond their own cultural standards. And also, I think, one of the secrets, and it's probably one of the secrets of your success as well, is they are able to be effective across cultures because they have themselves had some intercultural roots or intercultural story or background, so they can connect with people across cultures, across industries, and get all these insights together to find a good solution. How did you get to where you are today? What do you think?
Hmm. I think, well, I said I started to be an intern, right? And maybe I can tell you a little bit about that. So I started that internship and I really didn't like it at first. I thought it was uh, too organized. I felt I was not effective enough. I didn't understand, of course, all of the topics of mobility, and I didn't really see myself there. So I thought, well, I will do something totally different. And we used to have a senior manager in our team. She was very, I mean, obviously known, but she was also very much respected and a bit feared, I would say. And she once called me in her office and she said, "Well, you're in the middle of your internship. What do you want to do next?" And I said, well, I'm probably gonna go. I will maybe work in a bank and she said, "Ah, yeah, that's very interesting." She said, "Well, it's a pity because I think you can really do a career at EY." And she probably told me many other things, but that's the one that stays in my mind. That somebody that I had a lot of respect of, and somebody also was very good at what she was doing, thought about me like this. I think it gave me a bit of strength to believe in myself,
Yeah.
and to continue. So I actually decided to extend and sign a contract, full-time contract with EY, and that's a bit was the beginning. And then I think then the next 15 years or 14 years, was a lot about, of course, work and I think willing to do good and understand what we're doing, because mobility is also very wide. Yeah, there's many topics that it can touch, and there is never a question that you can say, well, this one I really understand 100%, it's fine, I'm just going to do that. There's always going to be new challenges. And working in an environment that is as a big four, it also grows very fastly, and you need to keep the pace. So I always like that challenge of being able, you never think, well, you start by having a task that you don't understand at all. You start to master it a little bit, and then you get to the point where you feel you mastered that a bit too much, and maybe this is a little bit too boring, something else come up. So it's either a promotion or it's an assignment, or it's a change in the way, in our structure, into our reporting lines, into our office, that comes always to bring you something more and more interesting and quite actually exciting in a way. I realize that I'm a bit addicted to that. And and sometimes I envy the people who work in a corporate world, because I have the impression that maybe, it's less it's probably more stable in a certain sense, or more organized, and maybe not as fast, which is sometimes good. But on the other hand, I like very much what I do, and after a while as well, you create a lot of connection with many people. You have, and the mobility of space in Switzerland is also quite small.
Mhm.
So you tend to know at the end a lot of different people who do a lot of different jobs, and of course helps you as well in terms of how do you evolve yourself in your career. There was one thing I was thinking about, because I had to do an exercise in terms of what are my strengths, and I think out of that exercise I came out thinking that actually my strengths is connecting with people. I have the technical side of tax, of course, and understanding of the business and the market and how we do the business, but it's more my ability of creating that, right? And I think I like that as well, which probably helps me to be good at this.
I so agree with you. I see that in you totally. And you also, if I may say that, you're not taking yourself so seriously. Like you're so senior, but you were still ready to, put on a mask for a fun event we had at the end of the Global Mobility Academy. And I think, that also makes you so approachable. And that's why, you easily get in contact with people. What do you think, if you were again this younger version of you, this intern, what would you advise yourself now with the experience that you have today?
Probably to believe in myself more,
Mhm.
and to be prouder of the achievement I had. Because I think as well, and it's maybe sound a bit of a cliche, but I think some of it is quite true in terms of how we women perceive ourselves in our career.
Mhm.
And we tend to be a lot into we need to be very good at something. Um, and we always look at where we have our gaps rather than where we have our strength.
Yep.
And I don't know if it's a female or male topic, or it's just me, but I know I'm like this. I would tend to see, well, I've done that job perfectly well, but actually this piece, it's not perfectly done, and I still do it today, right? So maybe a bit less, but I still do it. Um, I think what I will definitely say to myself is, yes, trust more in myself, in my abilities, and celebrate a bit more my successes rather than to think, you know, uh, where to go next. At the same time, I'm also thinking that maybe I get where I get because I was always demanding with myself.
Mhm.
But this I don't know, right? It's
Yeah.
it's more up there in the air, and potentially. And I also truly believe that it's quite difficult to be somebody else. You have to be yourself, and that's actually what works.
Yeah.
And it's also work actually in a client environment, in any professional environment, more than I think anything else of people telling you. try to do this, go there, etc.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you're right. It's maybe not technically only a female issue, but I see it a lot with my clients that, many of us, I would say probably the majority of us, we're overly critical with ourselves. I include myself here. Overly critical, overly perfectionist, busy bees. We're running in the rat race, we're doing the work, and we often forget to celebrate. I am also lucky because I had at least two or three people, maybe even more in my career, who at one stage would just give me like things, like they would tell me things like, hey, you're doing a good job, but are you also making sure that two or three levels above you know that you're doing a good job? Or another person, who said, you have really good analytical skills. You should be consulting others. Like, senior people, like you said, the senior manager that believe in you and that, show you the ropes, take you under their wings. I think that is also really, really helpful. And the earlier we start to build those connections, the better. Because people often see your potential while you don't even see it.
That's so true. That's so true. And I have to say that, something I started to do in the last maybe year or two is really try to work closer with some of our juniors.
Good. Great.
And then also, talk to them about some things, and some things I've seen, some of them that have like a high potential, because I understood how it played a motivational role for me back at the time. I can also understand how much it can be motivating for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's quite important that we play that role. Of course, in a firm like EY, it's even more important because I usually say is that we only have people. That's what we rely on. So that's the only asset and that we have. And of course, we need to make sure that we also take care of people, right? And it goes through doing that as well and having regular conversation with these people as well.
Yes. Radmilla, you're a great, amazing role model. Is there any place where you would suggest, as a global mobility professional, someone who's been in the field for so long, are there any topics that you think mobility managers, also tax advisors, immigration consultants, recruiters should understand better or learn more about? For example, we have this master course in Holland. I always ask this question so we get more insights from different perspectives on maybe things we should add to our curriculum or stress more in our lectures. What do you think?
I think reward is a topic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I've quite recently taken over the responsibility of a team. I mean, quite recently, a bit more than a year, but recent in my times with EY. And I realized that the reward thinking is sometimes a bit different than our tax thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what is interesting is that rewards look at it through the lens of gross income, where we, mobility people, we tend to think it through net income.
Mm-hmm.
And where mobility usually sits under reward in a given company, what is interesting is that to link the two, which means is it's a connection between that reward thinking, which is more growth focus, to say, yes, that's the growth, but this is what it means in net. And from the mobility side is also maybe to understand a bit better the landscape of, we tend to think, oh, it's salary, it's bonus, I don't know, we tax equalize or whatever we do, and then this. But all of that tax equalize, that goes into the gross comp of the reward people. And I think the connection between the two sometimes is very loose. And
Mm-hmm.
in companies, it's very loose. Each one is thinking on their own side.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That is an important topic to consider, especially, because we're trending towards less and less balance sheet approaches, more and more host-driven, market-based, and also, permanent transfers, international hires. So the total compensation is probably more important for many expats nowadays than in the classical global mobility models that we used to have. And yeah, one of the things, I would even add is I always speak of the box of chocolates, like the whole, benefit package that you also receive. And for example, people moving to Switzerland, they often don't really understand how valuable the pension fund is, for example, because that is a concept that doesn't exist in every country. So, that we also stress the benefits that come along with the package, maybe a bit more than just talking about gross and net salary. Good
Indeed,
point.
indeed, yes.
Point. Noted for the future. And do you have anything coming up, any events, maybe at EY Geneva or in Zurich, anything for global mobility managers that you can publicly talk about and, we can even maybe link to, or that you would like to tell us about?
Yeah, we're gonna have our annual conference on mobility. So
Mhm.
we have a global one conference that's gonna come up around May, which is gonna be in Barcelona. And then we will have an event in Switzerland, in Zurich. I think the date, if I'm not mistaken, is 26th of June.
All right.
I will add the link as soon as it is available, where we usually spend half a day. It's an in-person event, and then half a day of really connecting to trying to find few topics that are currently interesting, but also finding enough time for people to network and connect and find a good thing. So this is coming up at the end of June.
Fantastic. And these events are amazing. I know that because I've also attended a few. And, whenever you have the link, let me know, then we can also update the show notes
Of
because
course,
maybe you don't have it ready yet. That's fantastic.
I will.
Radmilla, it was a great pleasure to have you here on this interview today. Thank you and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, Angie. Thank you. Bye bye. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.